The doctors actually spoke to my parents to prepare for the worst. Hi, I'm Ismail Ali. I'm 40 this year. I've struggled with my weight since young. I was a manager of a newsroom, managing a team covering social and political events. It was a very high pressure job that requires my devices to be switched on 24/7. And to release stress from work, I smoke and drink excessively and consume a lot of fatty and sugary foods. By 2017, my weight increased to 150 kilo, which is considered obese for my height of 1.85 meter. This was when I discovered carb blockers, which is a supplement to actually block all the carbohydrates. So I took carb blocker for about a year, and in that time, my intake of rice, noodles, and soft drinks increased. I thought that I was invisible because of the carb blockers. So I stopped caring, about the food I eat, and at that point of time, I guess I was consuming about 5,000 calories a day. And since I was working out, my weight did not increase by a lot. At one point, I actually even lost some weight. So my weight loss actually convinced me that my exercise regime and the carb blockers were working as planned. However, I didn't know that at that point of time, my sugar levels were up through the roof and my health was on a decline. Well, I just came back from a business trip in KL, and I was scheduled to actually fly to Myanmar to be one of the groomsmen at my best friend's wedding. That was back in January 2018. At that point of time when I got back from KL, I was already suffering from haemorrhoids, and I was experiencing frequent urination, dehydration, thirst, lethargy, and weight loss for some time. So I thought that was because of my stressful lifestyle. On the day that I was supposed to fly to Myanmar, I was shivering, I couldn't stand up properly. I felt that my fever was getting worse and worse. So that was when I decided to cancel my trip to Myanmar. And yes, I visited my GP for the second time, and he told me to admit myself to the hospital immediately. Upon admission to the hospital, I was told that my blood platelet count was extremely low, and I had to undergo a simple surgery to remove the infected hemorrhoids. And next thing I know, I woke up in the ICU of the hospital, and apparently I was in a coma for about 7 days. Well, when I woke up, the doctor and the nurses actually told me that my body had went into septic shock, and that was because of my infection, and it went to my bloodstream. I found out that the symptoms that I had was caused by diabetes ketoacidosis, which also is a life-threatening complication of diabetes, and that happens when one's sugar level is very high. Both these conditions had caused my organs to actually shut down. My doctor told me that they had a hard time to find the right combination of drugs to treat the infection, and that's why they were forced to put me into a medically induced coma. So thankfully, the next combination that they actually tried works, and I was awake the next day, and within a couple of days I was up and feeling much better.
Was it a real wake-up call for you?
Well, when I was in the hospital, I was thinking a lot about what happened and my lifestyle, and it was a real wake-up call for me. I was discharged about a week later, and I was prescribed a course of antibiotics for the infection and was given insulin to manage my blood sugar levels. I was officially a type 2 diabetic, and I think it's time for me to take control of my health and my life. So when I came home, I went into a keto diet where 10% of my diet consisted of carbs. I treated this keto diet not as a long-term solution, but as a way to kickstart my weight loss and bring my sugar levels down. I also quit smoking cold turkey and converted one of my rooms in my apartment into a gym and pick up cycling again, something that I enjoy. I currently practice intermittent fasting, or IF. I also do low-carb, high-fat diet, and also count my calories. I changed the way I see food and learn to listen to my body better. Other than that, I also do an hour of cardio every day. And on alternate days, I'll do an extra 30 minutes of weight training.
So how are you now? How different are you now from before?
Very different. Today I weigh about 136 kilo. Although it's far from my ideal weight, I feel much better about myself. I've also recently taken up a new job in a very less stressful environment, and I'm much happier. But I also believe that everything happens for a reason. What happened to me made me look at life differently. I'm currently in a much happier and healthier place right now than I've been in a very long time.
Hi, my name is Dr. Ben Ng. I'm a consultant endocrinologist in Mount Elizabeth Novena, Singapore. I think at the end of the day, what has happened is that you look at his story, he has had his condition for a while. The main problem you really have here is that diabetes, blood pressure and all that, in the initial stages, you have absolutely no symptoms. And therefore, most people think they're doing okay. The problem is that in Ismail's case is when I think what has probably happened is that this has happened for a while. He's not been looking after himself well. He's had a stressful job. He hasn't gone for health screening and so forth. And things gradually got worse. And basically, I believe that the hemorrhoids was the trigger point. I don't think the blood pressure or the diabetes caused the hemorrhoids, but ultimately he had a mild condition. And what happened was, in the presence of severe diabetes or long-standing diabetes and blood pressure, the condition became extremely difficult to treat. And because in diabetes, when your sugars are high, infection gets worse. In blood pressure, infection gets worse and it's much harder to treat. So when I believe he developed the hemorrhoids and it was complicated, ultimately his whole body just crashed at that stage. And that obviously made things a lot harder to treat. Diabetes is a condition. Think about diabetes as what we call a metabolic dysfunction. It's a condition where you can't use energy properly. Many people see diabetes as, oh, my sugars are high. But I think we need to think a bit laterally about diabetes. The reason why your sugars are high in your blood is because it's stuck in the blood. When we eat food, when we start to take in food and so forth, all this food is absorbed, converted to sugar, brought into the blood, and ultimately absorbed into the body. The fact that your body cannot take in the sugar implies that something is wrong. In the US, we will get Singapore data soon, there has been a doubling, literally a doubling of the rate of type 2 diabetes, not the one on insulin, type 2 diabetes in children in the United States. And they believe that the reason on that in 2019 is because of the pandemic. I believe that the same thing is here within Singapore itself. Lifestyle has changed, our eating habits has changed. It wasn't that good in 2019, but I think it probably got worse in the last few years. Ultimately, carb blockers don't completely work. They work only to an extent. When you talk about eating is a very complex situation. What you don't want to do is, I'm going to take this so I don't absorb that, therefore I can enjoy my food. And that doesn't really help the whole situation. What you're really looking for, and what Ismail did, is a sustainable lifestyle change. And ultimately, what you're trying to do is you're trying to adopt a good habit where you start to choose better kinds of food. Now, diabetic ketoacidosis is a medical emergency. It commonly happens in what we call type 1 diabetic patients where they don't have insulin at all. This is not the case in Ismail. What has happened here, I suspect, is that his sugars has been high for such a long time that it's become toxic and the body couldn't cope with it. When that happens and the body's ability to process sugar becomes so badly impaired, ketones start to form, where ultimately the body unable to process it, and high levels of ketones are acidic. So that becomes a very serious condition, and you basically can get multiple organ failure with that. I think when you look at chronic disease, you look at blood pressure, diabetes, and cholesterol, please understand that lifestyle is the pinnacle of treatment. There are medications, but then the next question, if you do start medications, is when do you stop? And the reality is that if you don't change your lifestyle, you cannot stop, and you're committing yourself to lifelong medication. However, if you look at it, if you are determined, you are like Ismail, take that story as an inspiring story. If you change your lifestyle, maybe you don't have to be as dramatic as what he did, but if you change your lifestyle, you eat that 1 spoon of rice less, you take that 1 cup of bubble tea less, you exercise just that 1 extra time, that's going to make changes in your lifestyle and your overall health. And who knows, it may be enough to prevent potential diabetes from happening. Or if you have diabetes, speak to your medical doctor. As Ismail has shown, you can reverse the condition. Why don't we try that? And ultimately, it can be done with intensive lifestyle interventions.